Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
There it goes. There it goes. There we go. There's the rush. Oh my God.
It looked like it'd been through like a washing machine, you know.
On Tuesday, May 19th, 2020, two dams on the Tittabawassee River system in Gladwin and Midland counties breached after the area received several inches of rain. Two lakes, Wixom and Sanford, essentially emptied in just a matter of hours after the breach. Amazingly, no lives were lost, but the results were devastating. This disaster destroyed or heavily damaged homes and businesses along the river's corridor in Edenville, Sanford, Midland, and Freeland. Thousands of lives were impacted, resulting in a flood of emotions.
At first light, we kind of split up, and my parents went to assess the damage at their place, and my husband and I came here and started taking all of our stuff out to the curb.
I'm angry at something that you work so hard for, and you just don't know who to blame.
This is not just a flood caused by rain. This is a disaster that leads back almost 100 years.
A disaster of this magnitude surely brings with it more questions than answers. But we can't answer every question or tell every story. These stories will surely continue to evolve over many more years, possibly even decades. Our goal is to show how this disaster impacted the lives of the people it washed over, and to celebrate how the community rallied, even in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, to levels of volunteerism far above and beyond expectations.
Yeah, I don't think it's mine, but pour some Coke over it and it might be good to go. I moved here about a year ago in April, and my house was here. I have a beautiful, well, not right now, but I had a beautiful view of just these trees and just this gorgeous area. And now my house is way down there in the corner on the verge of the river, basically stuck on a tree. If it wasn't for that tree, it would be in the river, so I'm thankful because I'm still able to salvage things, but that's where my house is now. Well, this was where it was. This was actually the crawl space, and it was up higher, and that was my garage. It looks clean. I never had it so clean, but then it all blew away. I still haven't found my garage, but I do know my house is way over there. I'm thinking my garage is over there, but I can't be 100% sure. To see something that was and then something that wasn't, I can't even describe it. And then for all of that just to be gone, and then you look at your foundation, and it's like there was actually a house here. It seems so surreal. My neighbors and I, we met at across the street. There's just a cement slab where a house used to be. And we're just standing there, nothing else is on the cement slab, but we see something shiny in the corner and pick it up, and it's a Christmas ornament of Noah's Ark. And you're like, how ironic is this? We're like, if this isn't a sign, I don't know what is. This is my 5th time out to my house to just try to see, actually my main purpose was to go out and try to find my mom's ashes. She was in a small little urn. The house is so muddy and just so much devastation in there that I mean, I've looked every time I've gone in there, but there were some other things that I thought maybe I could salvage. I still was missing my great-grandfather had given me a silver dollar the year I was born, so it's a 1971 silver dollar, and I found that today. So I'm very thankful for that, and just little things, you know. And it's a part of you, and it might not seem like much to other people, but like I found my little harmonica that my dad had given me, and you know, photos, just family photos with my dad, my mom, my brothers, you know, my brother's kids, my jump rope. Oh, that was the other thing too. I had a wine glass, and it has our last name, the Parsh Crest. It was underneath my refrigerator, and I wasn't able to lift the refrigerator up, so I broke it. It's not a flood. My house would have survived in a flood. This is breaking of dams and failure of dams that caused this, and caused not just me, this whole Sanford community, and Midland, and Gladwin, and all over. So somebody has to be held accountable for that. But what I keep telling people is that you don't know devastation until you live devastation. And when you come down here, you feel it. You know, whether you were affected by it or not, you feel it. You feel what people have lost and what they've gone through. And it's nothing that you can really describe in words. You have to feel it. You know, people say, oh, that really sucks. But until you are here, then you know what that really means.
The story of the Sanford and Edenville dams and of Sanford and Wixom Lakes goes back almost 100 years. According to Virginia Flory of the Midland Daily News, the original idea for the dams was generated by Frank Isaac Wixom, a farmer. He wanted to harness the power of the Tittabawassee and Tobacco Rivers to generate cheap electricity for farmers and industry, and to create a recreational area. Before the dam on Wixom Lake was breached, approximately 1,200 properties in Gladwin County were flooded by the record water levels. When the earthen dam failed, the water drained away, leaving a jaw-dropping landscape. Nani and Pat Dominy, a retired couple, have lived on the east side of Wixom year-round for the past 3 years.
It was about 12:30 at night. Nani's brother called, and she just happened to be up, and she heard the answering machine. So she grabbed the phone, and he said, "You have to evacuate." He got it on Nextel on his cell phone. And at 12:30, the water was up to the first step on her deck. Well, I said, well, we're not going to rush right out. But by 2:30, it was up to the third step. We only had 4 steps, so it was about 8 inches left before it was in the living room, and we left. And there wound up being 23 inches of water in the kitchen. The dam broke about 5:30, and of course the water went down immediately and very fast. We came back up early the next morning, and the water was all gone, and the house was a disaster, and we just kind of moped around and wondered what we were going to do.
The volunteers who came were absolutely wonderful. They not only left water and some food items, but they came through and saw what needed to be done and did it.
It was interesting that 4 young girls ripped all that drywall off. It took them 2 days. It's not only the people that came to help us, but hundreds of volunteers cleaned up the street. I mean, there were mountains of rubble everywhere. And these people that don't know us from Adam just appeared and helped. And you see things like that, and it restores faith in humanity. people ask me, well, how high was the water? It'll give you some idea. If you look down at the neighbor's hoist, you can see that's our picnic table on the top of there. We got to go down there and get our picnic table off his hoist. Just the cost of the repair on the house, the estimate from the builder is $107,000. And that, of course, doesn't include new carpeting and furniture and all that. I would guess probably another $10,000 or so cover it pretty well. A lot of the things can be replaced. The things that can't be replaced, the 10,000 slides that are all categorized and labeled, and we have a little book that was a directory so you could find what you wanted to see. And pictures of family, things that belonged to her mother and father are gone. I found one newspaper that I could save. It was dated June 6, 1944, and it was a copy of the Duluth Times announcing the invasion of Europe.
We're just fortunate nobody lost their lives in this thing, but
yeah,
they've lost a lot of other things.
That's considering what happened here and at Sanford and in Midland, and no serious injuries and no loss of life, it's a miracle.
Across the street, the home of their neighbors, Ron and Sandra Streeter, began to flood from water in the canal behind their house.
At about 6:15, we got up. She seen that the water was almost to our porch. When I come out and looked, I've kind of got some knowledge of it. I said we had 45 minutes before we had water in the house. 45 minutes later, I had water in the carpet in our bedroom, and it started coming around the refrigerator. She had ran in the laundry room, grabbed a bunch of towels. She was actually putting towels down. By the time she got the last towel down, it had sheeted the floor. We left here by 11 o'clock. We had knee-deep water in here. Got to thinking, all my guns are still here in my gun case. We needed to be here, so we blasted back here. Drove through almost 3 foot of water to get here. It was in the house, but it wasn't quite to the garage. It was halfway between the house and garage. We hauled our bed, somewhat furniture we could, and stuffed it all right in the garage, hoping that it wasn't going that far. Took us probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. It was just starting to creep up the side of the step of the garage. Well, by then I already know the water's deep down here. It was already into my door jambs. It hadn't quite made it to about to the window yet, and they said in 20 minutes when the dam broke, the water was gone.
It has been reported that when Frank Wixom faced health and financial challenges, the Hayhurst family stepped in to rescue Wixom and formed the Wolverine Power Company. Construction on the dams began in 1923. 4 dams were built, creating 4 lakes: Secor, Smallwood, Wixom, and Sanford, which cover a distance of 35 miles from north to south. The dams were completed in 1924, and they first generated power in 1925. In 2004, the Midland Daily News reported that Sinex, Michigan acquired the dams after Wolverine Power defaulted on a loan. Boyce Hydropower then purchased the dams from Sinex in 2006. Concerns about the dams go back to the early 1990s.
So some of the main concerns with the dam that we were able to look into as a newsroom were problems with the spillway capacities on the dams, the ability of the dams and their spill gates to pass the probable maximum flood, which is like the worst case scenario flood, which is something, especially Edenville Dam, wasn't up to standard to do, going back to as early as 1993, which was pointed out to the owners at the time, Wolverine Power, by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So that was one issue. Another one was the ongoing back and forth between the state and Boyce Hydro regarding the mussel population that existed in Wixom Lake that ran the extreme risk of being damaged and endangered further by Boyce Hydro's decisions to draw down the lake levels.
Boyce Hydro is required to have a disaster plan and hold periodic disaster exercises by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Jennifer Boyer, Midland County's Emergency Management Coordinator, worked with Boyce and public safety agencies on the plan. They held a training exercise in August 2019.
So that exercise was a way for us to kind of validate some of those things and also to make sure that we understood what Boyce Hydro's role was in this type of scenario, but also for everybody in a room together, city, township, county, all of them looking at the same issue and having conversations about how best to coordinate, how best to use resources and approach it. And sometimes those things are more valuable than me handing someone a plan and asking them to read it.
From Sunday, May 17th to Tuesday, May 19th, a series of storms generated from 4 to 8 inches of rain on the Tittabawassee and Rifle River basins. Late Monday evening, Boyer briefed the county's emergency operations staff on current concerns about the Edenville Dam. Overnight Monday into Tuesday, the order to evacuate the Wixom Lake and Sanford Lake areas was issued. On Tuesday, May 19th, Boyce reported the dams at Smallwood, Edenville, and Sanford had the potential for failure. That afternoon, local fire chiefs took a first-hand look at the Edenville Dam.
About 15 minutes or so after our fire chiefs left Edenville Dam failed. I got a phone call from the dam operator letting me know that Edenville Dam had breached on the Tittabawassee side. I asked him to repeat that. I had my 911 director standing right next to me, so I had him speakerphone. We actually were standing outside at that time, and we said, "Thank you, stay safe, goodbye." We come back into the building. She went to dispatch, talked about warnings, what warnings we had to get out, and warnings went out.
The order to evacuate downstream from the Edenville Dam was sent out to the public at 5:41 p.m. The order to evacuate the west side of Midland was issued at 6:40 p.m. Over 10,000 people had to leave their homes in the city of Midland. Many fled to one of 5 evacuation centers set up in Midland County, including this center at Midland High School. A common refrain is, "It's amazing no lives were lost."
You know, that is not just a testimony to first responders, that's also a testimony to the fact that citizens in this community trust the folks that are sending out these notices and saying, please get out of your homes because we don't want you to get hurt and there are potentials for risk, and they listen to us, right? And that's really critically important because we can send out all the evacuation notices in the world, but if people don't listen, then people get hurt.
Dan Dice and his family lived in a home on the north side of downtown Sanford. It's located across from the park that sits below the Sanford Dam. It took a direct hit.
I was gonna stay. I was gonna stay and hang out. It's never got that high before. Nobody thought the dams were gonna break. So my wife eventually convinced me we need to leave. The next day, I was very eager to come back and see what damage was done. Yeah. That's all I need right there. Hurrah! Semper Fi! She held up. This house did not hold up. My neighbors, and look what saved me. This tree saved me, saved my house. Oh man, damn it. Look at all the houses that are gone, all the places that are gone over there. Okay, let's see how high we think the water went though. Look at, I got water up in here, or I got debris up in there where it was rushing in, it looks like. Water got pretty high, it got up there, you can see cracks up there. Yes, so when I first came in the house, this is what it looked like. Oh my God. Is that an alarm? Jordan, why'd you leave the house such a mess? Jordan, our brand new couches. Our brand new couches. Oh, my deck! My shed! Damn it! My shed is gone. All my goodies in my shed. Oh, man. When I first came to the house, I didn't see any of this, obviously. It was all underwater. The next day, I came back, and I noticed this foundation here was all washed away and makes the house really unstable. The porch is all caving in, basically. The house is coming in together on itself. There's a lot of logs still in the water. It was all nasty, muddy water coming in, and it came in right at the corner of my porch and literally split my walls apart like that. That's where that pressure knocked down that foundation too. So yeah, right here you can see that the house has been pushed that way and back probably 6-8 inches, this way a couple inches. Had to jack the house all the way up and move it over, fix the foundation before we could ever rebuild it. An easy indicator of how high the water went is the sediment in the grass and leaves up there up on the ceiling. My daughter's bedroom is in here, and her toys and crib and everything, her dressers all wrecked. People have really been categorizing this as a flood, but it's not a flood. It's a disaster. It's horrible. The dam's broke. It's overwhelming to the people down here. All the work put into this house, wrecked.
Just a few blocks away to the east, Penny Tyler's home was also flooded. It's a home that her parents purchased 55 years ago.
I got back to my house on Thursday morning, and everything was so sloppy, wet and dirty, and everything was slippery. You could hardly even walk through the yard without falling down. And the volunteers were just pouring in. It was great that, we had the help. I went inside and it looked horrible. Everything was not where it was supposed to be, and ruined and covered with just a filthy, mucky sand or dirt, just slimy. It was horrible. It was the worst thing I've ever seen, yes. The watermark was right here. It was like a washer, and it just jumbled everything to the point of everything was on top of everything. The cupboards were off the walls. The stove or the refrigerator was laying in the living room. Everything was just down. Everything was just ruined. I sat there and cried and cried and cried. I cried for 5 days. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't do anything. All I could do is cry. And it was a lot to see my neighbors, all of us that are so close together that we're just going to be separated. And we're just all devastated. We don't know what to think, how to think. It's so much to think about. Everybody just lost everything, and now we're all worried about each other. It's so hard. It's the unimaginable.
The lakes also tore through the businesses in downtown Sanford. By that first weekend after the disaster, some buildings were either torn down or stripped down to the studs, including Lanny's Restaurant, a fixture in Sanford since the 1970s.
What I understand, this original part was built in the 30s. So it's just been added onto and added onto. Well, obviously nothing was salvageable. The water was above the ceiling, so when the water receded, everything, bringing up the code, it would be easier to tear it down and rebuild it.
The initial damage was way more than I think anybody ever expected. I think it was like going to a funeral for 300 people all at one time, because there was a huge loss of what people had, and there was a lot of grieving in the streets, grieving amongst family members, grieving about businesses lost where people spent all of their social time. And I think what was really lost in this community was the memories, the childhood neighborhoods, 2 and 3 generation businesses, and so the loss goes deeper than losing your home and your belongings, but also about all your memories and then what will the future bring. And it was a social place. Having a lake is where people go out on the lake, they visit each other's homes all summer, they have parties in their yard, and now people are wondering what will their future look like and how soon the lakes may or may not come back.
Porty was pleased by the numerous volunteer efforts in her community, including Sanford Strong. Started by Teresa Quintana and Emily Rickards, the Sanford Strong Facebook page has thousands of followers.
I don't think that we ever imagined that it would turn out the way that it has. I think that it kind of started with the intentions of being informational for people, and so we could see the disaster and what was going on, so we could
process.
Right.
What I noticed was that on our normal Sanford page, we have a Sanford page, Sanford Past, Present, and Future, where it's a small town and people like to communicate, and sometimes we like to over-communicate, but it's where we would give each other updates or talk about a nice story or share pictures of the past. And I noticed it was just immediately inundated with all flood things related, and I thought to myself, 30 years down the road, this is going to be like 6 months of this page is going to be flood related. Is there a place that we could take it that isn't going to take over the entire historical nature of our town? And so I created it and never thought it was going to turn into this.
People needed generators, people's sump pumps stopped working, people needed help getting water out of their basements, people needed somewhere to go, people needed supplies and food.
It just kind of grew into resources that we had that we could share with the community, and then people just started donating left and right, and so it turned from disaster, like a disaster relief that we have no training in, to
we do now,
to
crash course.
Right, crash course, to also being able to make sure that the town was fed, that there was water available because so many people's water was turned off, that they might have the tools they need to work on their home, the volunteers that were coming, and when I say coming, I mean coming out of their house to help their neighbor, not just flooding in from out of town, but the volunteers that were coming would be able to be matched up with people that needed the help the most.
Emily's sister, Martina Rickards, a clinical social worker, worries about the lasting effect of the trauma people have experienced.
Obviously the people that were directly impacted by the flood and lost businesses and homes, but it's also all the volunteers that have just poured out, people that I've talked to that are spending 10, 12, 15 hours a day helping people rip apart their homes. That's taking an emotional toll as well. To sit there, physically, of course, that labor, but to watch that over and over and over again, there's only so many boxes of pictures and wedding rings that you can look for before you start crying yourself and start exhibiting signs of trauma. So this is so widespread. I don't think people are realizing how much help Sanford, Edenville, the Wixom Lake area, Midland is going to need. We are just now starting to see, kind of what this might look like. And that's not saying that everybody that has lived through this is going to be, diagnosed with PTSD by any means, but I think people need help and support now, right now, as they start to put some pieces back together.
Mark Brown owns 2 homes on Sanford Lake that were heavily damaged. He and his wife, Susan, built their house on the lake 15 years ago. And he also owns a home that his daughter and her family reside in.
We were heading back to the house, and then we got a text on our phone that the Edenville Dam breached. We actually came back here, and Sue walked down to the house and she snapped a few pictures. The water was up to our porch level, so it wasn't quite in the house yet. Our crawl space was probably full. The water was about at her waist when she walked down to the house. When she walked back up, the water was at her armpit. So that's a matter of 10 minutes it rose that far. I was actually up on the road, and out on the lake, I saw pontoons, sheds, jet skis, other things I couldn't identify, but they were moving down the lake, so that was everybody's stuff from upstream washing by. The next day, we came out to the house. There's a water line over there. It's about 3.5 feet up in our house. So refrigerators apparently they float, freezers were on their sides. Our furniture was floated all around. Our belongings were all over. Something busted the back door to our house open, so we had dead fish on the floor. We had logs from people that fire pits or whatever. They were all over the house. Some of our stuff was out on the lawn. It got washed out. There was probably 1.5 inches of slick, silty mud throughout the house. I don't know, we lost anything that was down here. It was pretty much gone. So we've been hauling that out, just trying to clean up and get things back in order. My wife tried to get flood insurance and they would never quote it for us. So I mean, every year since they took us out of the floodplain, we tried to get it just so we'd have it, just in case. But we couldn't get it. Insurance isn't paying anything. As a matter of fact, when my wife got on the phone with them, the agent from Liberty Mutual said, "We are not paying you a dime." And according to my wife, it sounded like he was happy to say that. We couldn't have afforded a house like this if we didn't build it ourselves. There's no way. We had somebody do the drywall, somebody do the HVAC, and somebody help with the foundation. Everything else Sue and I did over 18 months. We're gonna die in this house, okay? And now we're not even sure if we're gonna be able to live here.
That dream is destroyed. And that story is not just our story. That everybody on this lake has a story like that. There's so many 70-year-olds, 60-year-olds that finally got to achieve their dream. And I mean, our neighbor is walking away from his house because he's too old to deal with this problem. And he doesn't have enough time in his life. And I think that's the saddest part too, is this whole community isn't gonna see this. Even if the best things happen, no one is gonna see a resolution. I mean, we'll be lucky if it's 5 years, if all the right things happen.
We're just trying to rebuild now. So we own Stacy's house, she lives there, we own this house. Her house is gutted. I have no idea if we're even gonna be able to rebuild that house. I don't know where the money would come from. My wife and I have decent jobs, but not enough to do 2 houses.
People lost everything. We lost everything. We might never be able to come back to this house. And we're lucky. There were people whose houses floated right off of their foundations. And what's better, to come back to just a foundation or to come back to this mess? Who wins in that situation? What do you hope for, to come back to all this or to come back to absolutely nothing? But men did this to us. Men put us in this position. This wasn't an act of God. This wasn't just the rain. It was all these little things that people allowed to go wrong for a long time that led to this disaster.
We have mortgages on our houses. We had equity in them. We don't have equity anymore. And we don't even know if there's gonna be a lake again. So if there's not a lake, we'll never have equity. So we're kind of concentrating on getting this house back. We just don't know where we're at with that. We're lost.
On the west side of Sanford Lake, one of the neighborhoods hit hard was Verity Shores. This home belongs to Roger Croning. His daughter, Sharon, was grateful for the volunteers working on her dad's house.
I didn't know if he was going to lose his house, you know, and it's like I say, I grew up here. This will always be home, you know. The whole basement was filled. The water had raised to the bottom of the bay window in the living room. There were literally 6 fish swimming in the basement. So we had to pump that out. The basement windows were just knocked through. The patio door, which is in the upper level, was crashed through as well. I don't know if something floated and hit it or what, but it's that was taken out. It's a lot of damage. The help, I don't know that you can put into words how much you appreciate or feel, you know, so blessed. I don't know that you can put that into words. It's today we have people from Ohio, we have people, you know, a guy from Virginia, we've had North Carolina, Texas, I mean, just people have come from all over.
Yeah, Roger, he's a good old dude. Just right place at the wrong time, and we're here to fix them up. We're blessed down home. I've never had this, so I like to work, I like to do stuff, and I like to help people.
The Meridian Public Schools campus was a hub for people needing help in the Sanford Lake area.
This facility was really started Grassroots. This is a distribution center. It was set up by Meridian Public Schools on basically day one when the superintendent and principal were getting calls for help. From just food and water to cleaning supplies to finding them shelter to on the fly coordinating volunteers to go fix their drywall. So we have a form that the people fill out for what types of supplies they need. We kind of do almost like a drive-up grocery store so that they can stay in their car, stay safe from COVID, and then they get it out and they bring it directly into their vehicle. The community has been amazing. I've lived in amazing places before, but this is the most amazing one I think I've ever been in. We have literally everybody from all walks of life coming to help.
All across the disaster's footprint, scores of volunteers pitched in to help. A volunteer team from Samaritan's Purse was helping out Darlene and Jim McDade. The command center for Samaritan's Purse, an international Christian charity, was Calvary Baptist Church in Midland. Calvary was one of many churches that immediately began to help flood victims.
We began trying to contact people through the church to find out what other needs there were. So a lot of the other needs that people have had is just where do we go to get supplies? Most of the stores you run into Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart or Meijer, and the cleaning products are gone, and gloves are gone, boots are gone, and so immediately we knew that if we could start a donation center, a lot of people even without power, we were able to start getting even generators. We have people that have had to get generators and get electrical backup. We've had electricians going to help in some of those homes, but food and water has been a big one. We've had baby supplies for diapers and wipes that we've been able to help people with, as well as toiletries and other items. So a lot of those things here, again, some of these national organizations have come in and brought in cleaning buckets that are filled with detergent and gloves and scrub brushes and all sorts of items that are helpful for the clean out process. And national organizations were sending money in to be able to help with that. We were able to buy more fans and dehumidifiers and other equipment so that once we got people's homes cleaned out, we could help them get dried out. And then, of course, Samaritan's Purse contacted us on Friday to headquarter here, that they just saw the need, and by Friday afternoon we knew that this was way bigger than anything our church or any one church in Midland could do, or even all the churches combined could do. And of course, providing food is a big thing too, and there's other churches that are doing that as well. Being able to feed people and keep them going on the job is a great help as well. Our community has been phenomenal. In fact, Samaritan's Purse, who goes all over the world helping with disaster relief, has complimented our community on just what an incredible response we have had. And it truly is a great testimony to the kind of people that are here in Midland and in Sanford. But they've been able to take over for us a lot of the demo work of getting things out of people's basements and getting the drywall. And our people were burning out real fast. And so volunteers from all over the nation and all over the state have been coming in to help with them as well, and that's allowed our church to kind of shift gears and try to meet some other needs that aren't just getting people cleaned out. What an incredible community this is, and how everybody seems to be pulling together, and so that really is an amazing thing. Coronavirus, I think it washed down the river, but that's been a tough thing on top of all this to consider and try to handle that. And our community has just done a phenomenal job. Man, we love Midland, and we know Midland loves us.
Amy Thomas came to Calvary Baptist Church for help following the flood. Her family's home is on Midland's west side near Sturgeon Creek, which flows into the Tittabawassee.
Our neighbors had already evacuated, so my husband said, "Baby, we have to go." He says, we have to get out of here. We had moved everything from our garage and our basement to our first floor. before, you know, when the water was starting to come in. Everything we had was on our first floor besides 2 bedrooms with beds in it. So we lost all of that. Her room, sorry. Her room was on the first floor and it was just her birthday and she lost all of her stuff. The junk pile goes from one end of our property to the other. So we're very thankful that the community, all the people that have come that we don't know from churches, Calvary Baptist here, Living Word Church. I mean, the people and the community have been absolutely amazing. No questions asked. They come in and say, where do you want us to start? It's gutted out completely all the way to the studs. All of our appliances are gone, everything. We've cut the drywall all the way up to the ceiling, have got all the insulation out. The floors have to be ripped up. They buckled up everywhere. Thankful we have flood insurance. What that's going to cover, we're not too sure just yet. Obviously, Homeowners isn't covering anything. So when the churches are putting this stuff together, because we've lost food, everything, all of our personal needs, clothes, so coming together and doing this, and it kind of makes her feel a little bit good because she comes in and she can pick out a few things that she wants or needs. So it's been a blessing. People bringing us hot meals while we're working, water, coolers, ice. I mean, just them small things that you think that you don't think about in this time. We would not have done any of this without the people in the community. There's no way we would have survived all this. Like right now, we're staying in a 5th wheel camper in our driveway, and my dad's house, which is in Saginaw. So now we just hope that the insurance covers at least enough to build our house back so we can go home. We have smaller children. They want to go home.
Neighborhoods north and south of the Tittabawassee River and east and west of the Sturgeon Creek were subjected to 2 types of flooding, overland and from the sanitary sewer system, which were overwhelmed by the floodwaters.
We followed the evacuation notice, and our son was over for dinner, and he said, grab your medicine, grab your toothbrush, and come with me. He lives on the other side of town, so we evacuated to his house. Wednesday, we canoed down and looked in our window, and we could see in the front room that the things had been rearranged through the bay window, but did not notice that our bushes were not in the front of the house anymore. So then when the water began receding down Gibson, we could drive here. And that's when I came and pulled in my driveway and noticed the big hole behind me in the basement wall. Well, that's a game changer. As soon as I saw that missing, I have a really good friend, Mike Babcock. He's a civil engineer and a good one. First thing, he jumped into action with my sons, and they said, okay, we need a couple of jack stands, we need some timber to put under that, and they were down there in 3 feet of water, up to their arms in the mud, trying to find the footing to have a secure place to put the jack stands, and they got it jacked up and stabilized. And that's when the housing inspector happened to come by, and he was putting condemned stickers on the ones who lost their wall. And he agreed. He says, these guys look like they know what they're doing and doing a good job, so he said, I'll let you go in and take out your furnishings inside the house. Well, we are blessed in that my mother and father-in-law owned the house across the street, and we brought them here 10 years ago, and my wife took care of them. They were in their 90s. They finally succumbed and passed away, so we had been preparing their house for sale. And in fact, we were just getting ready to put it on the market, and that week, after we found out that this house was really not livable, we said, well, we at least have a house to go to. So that's why we started moving things over there. Well, as it turns out, now that's going to be our new residence, and I'm not going to try to recuperate with this house. It's too big a task. I'm just not ready to do the contracting and have people come in, so we've hired a realtor, and Brooke Lagieb's done a terrific job finding people that are interested in the home, and they have the skills and the time and the money to fix it up and do whatever it is they're going to do with it. So it was a blessing to have that off of our mind, to say, okay, this house, even though it's our boys' home, it's been taken care of, and we still have a house to live in. So we're a lot better off than a lot of the people on this block, for sure. And it was a powerful, powerful, emotional experience.
Mountains of debris lined the streets in the flood-damaged areas. Crews from the city of Midland collected that debris for several weeks. Teams of volunteers gathered it in neighborhoods along Wixom and Sanford Lakes. The city's landfill received 110,000 cubic yards, more than triple what the landfill collects of that type of debris in a single year. Several major facilities were hit by flooding. Mid-Michigan Medical Center, Northwood University, the Grace A. Dow Memorial Library, Riverside Place, a senior living community, many churches, Curry Golf Course, Sanford's Historical Museum, Midland Center for the Arts, and the Doane History Museum in Midland, where volunteers worked to save historic artifacts and documents. About 2,500 homes and businesses were damaged in Midland County. It's reported that only 10% of all property owners were receiving some level of reimbursement from their insurance provider. Some property owners showed their displeasure. On July 9, 2020, President Trump signed the formal declaration declaring Midland, Gladwin, Aranac, Saginaw, and Iosco counties major disaster areas.
There's a number of resources that are available. The immediate pressing needs are being handled by organizations like the United Way, the Midland Area Community Foundation, Midland 211 are all resources for information sources and directing people to the right people to talk to. Financially, there's a number of services that are out there. Of course, with a federal declaration, an emergency and disaster declaration, we have resources that have been made available through that. And so people can contact FEMA and look for disaster assistance and get up to $35,000 in that process. There's also programs like the US SBA, the Small Business Administration provisions, where people can get low interest loans, whether it be for their homes, whether it be for their businesses, that they can get immediate financial resources to help them again, whether it be rebuild, repair, or in some cases replace all of those. More locally, we're looking at some programs such as the property acquisition through the hazard mitigation grant process, which again is a state and federal program. And that would be people who are looking at their homes, they've determined that they either can't or don't want to rebuild, and they're looking simply to sell and move. And that's a program that we're trying to find resources for because we have to provide a 25% local match, but it ultimately would allow us to purchase those properties and turn them into properties that would never be built on again. So high-risk properties in the floodplain are potential qualifiers for that.
Several bridges or their approaches were damaged or washed out, including Saginaw Road in downtown Sanford, US 10 over Sanford Lake, 2 M30 bridges on Wixom Lake and the Tittabawassee River, and the Curtis Road Bridge in Edenville.
You could hear the whole trees coming down and echoing as they banged against the bridge. The water just swallowed those trees, and it was just very scary. The water was very fast. We actually had probably 7 to 8 cords of wood that you just watched it all wash away, along with the gazebo and everything. And so that was around 6 p.m. to 6:30. Then it started to, go down, and then we ended up deciding to stay.
While the damage in Midland and Gladwin counties made most of the headlines, some properties in Saginaw County were also flooded. Mylan and Nikki Muslin's home in Freeland sits above and more than 200 yards away from the river, and they still were hit hard.
It was amazing how water you could actually see it coming up to you. And
I have never seen anything like that before. I mean, I had a plan for this flood until it went over. And when it went over, I looked at my wife and said, what the heck am I supposed to do now? I have nothing. It's game over. And I think you could honestly see just me being lost, out of control of everything, and just not have anything. And
just helpless.
Complete, utter helplessness. And she's like, grab that chair and bring it upstairs and start with that. Grab this picture and bring it upstairs. and she all of a sudden became the person to be in control and said, this is what we're gonna do. It's going to be okay. People in Freeland, just people we don't even know coming up in mass, you can't see them, see their faces, but they're just like, can we help you? Unbelievable. I mean, we are so lucky. The gazebo was damaged. The deck went above the pool and damaged the pool, which, as I was saying, my son's autistic. It's one of his favorite things that he plays in. And I think that was the thing that got me the most on it. Our shed was destroyed. The basement.
It was up to the door handle.
So that was gone. Our shop was a foot of water in there. There was water in our garage. And we're just looking at everything and just, what do we do next? I don't know who's at fault. At the end of the day, maybe we'll never know.
The big question is, who is responsible for the disaster? An independent team is investigating what happened. It is expected to report its findings to the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE, in 18 months. If needed, recommendations will be made sooner. At least 20 lawsuits have been filed on behalf of hundreds of property owners. Advertising for law firms seeking clients has become very visible in the area. Scott McFarland, a lawyer in Midland, started the Michigan Flood Victims legal team.
We've got several hundred clients. I believe we're probably eclipsing 500 or more. I've got one guy who's 18, 19 years old. He wanted to get involved in the class action because he lost his futon, a video game system, and some clothes. And then the other end of the spectrum is we've got clients that have lost several $1 million, and then everybody in between. And these people, they're just absolutely devastated. So the goal of the lawsuit is, man, it's just really to try and make people as whole as we can possibly make them, knowing that there's not a dollar amount that's going to put the pieces of the puzzle back together. So this is just a means to try and get them back on track with their lives, because a lot of them, the large portion of them, will never recover from this.
Boyce Hydro has filed for bankruptcy. A law firm representing Boyce did not respond to our request for comment. There were concerns about Boyce Hydro's management of the dams even before the disaster. Because of those concerns, a group of property owners formed the Four Lakes Task Force in 2018. That task force reports there are about 8,000 properties on the Four Lakes with a value of $750 million. They had been working with county and local governments in an effort to buy the dams from Boyce.
So we really kind of came out of a sense of urgency that the system had to change, and we were trying to be preemptive at doing that. And we came, within a few weeks of at least getting control and starting to make the improvements and changing the system. And now we're kind of not starting over, but we've got to reset. And then we have to get to a point where we have a vision and viewpoint for the community of how we're going to rebuild these dams. I think it's really important that the community takes ownership of the property to address it. That's the first goal. Second of all, we just have to recover. We have to stabilize the dam still, and there's a tremendous amount of erosion occurring that's still threatening the homes. And we have to deal with a lot of that over the next few months to get ready for spring. And at the same time, we have to really set a platform for rebuilding, and that includes the flood studies, financing, design, engineering. And so we're on those three paths right now to make sure we can recover, but also look for a future with lakes in it. Is it 4 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 6 years? Right now, we just have to get focused in the next 6 months on making sure we can make that vision happen, and that's what our focus is.
Continuing challenges facing the affected communities include adequate housing. Some people are still living in campers and tents. Erosion along lake shorelines. The loss of well water. Concerns about water quality. Safety concerns about the remaining dams on Secor and Smallwood lakes, and what remains of the dam structures on Wixom and Sanford Lakes. The damaging effects of the disaster will surely be long-lasting.
Certainly this disaster impacted the Midland and surrounding communities in a very devastating way. We lost the lake, we lost property, we might lose taxable value, we are going to see a difference in the quality of life that we offer in the community. When you talk about whether or not the dams are going to be rebuilt, I think that there is a general consensus that that would be a great thing. There is a huge value in both Wixom and Sanford Lakes. People come here, it's a close venue for people to travel to, and they don't just come to Sanford Lake Park and stop here. You know, they're running into the city of Midland to do some shopping, and they're eating at restaurants, and they're spending money. And so I think that you'll see some sort of reduction in economic impact or a reduction in economic revenue coming into the community because of it. And again, that's another reason for the dams to be rebuilt and bring back the lakes.
In the meantime, Mother Nature has begun taking over the lake beds, turning them into meadows, with the river running through.
So cute, phone.
Oh my God. I knew she was still in the corner.
Let's see, Kathy. Oh my gosh.
That's
Where did you find it? Way down there?
it. It couldn't have been any deeper in the mud. She was all the way in the corner.
Awesome.
We are going to build you a brand new house from the ground up at no charge at all. Yep. And you'll be in before it gets too cold out. Can't have you living in a camper with your neat little dog.